Hello, welcome to Get Informed Podcast. Today, you'll learn a whole lot about reconciliation. And you'll learn a whole lot about why we're in the middle of the street right now. In a couple minutes.
Where we'll interview people about truth and reconciliation in Canada. I'm Guthrie.
And I'm Lila Chesson, and you are listening to
Get Informed.
We have had so many trials, tribulations getting to this point, 3 days of recording, a location change, but we are here and ready to podcast. Are you ready?
I am. So excited. Trust me, there's been a lot of plans changed, but we're still doing it. It's still on. It's going to be amazing.
Yep. So, today, in our first episode, The Road to Reconciliation, we are going to be talking about truth and reconciliation in Canada.
Yep, so excited. It's going to be fun.
Yes.
So, our first ever podcast.
It's crazy. I've heard that the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission aren't going so well in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a lot of talk about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action. They're about 9 years old. I don't really know, Lila, how much are they completed?
There's only been 14 completed.
Oh, that's actually really disappointing. I was thinking it'd be like 30. I mean, I'm really bad at math, but still, like 9.5 years and only 14 completed. I mean, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action were supposed to be like a first step. And instead they're going to take, 70 years if we continue at this pace? Ugh.
Exactly. The government of Canada has failed to publish reports comparing Indigenous and non-Indigenous kids in the child welfare system and through education, and they just have not delivered.
Oh my gosh, and, I mean, child welfare is that's the most important thing. The children, the next generation, focus on them, not the old people.
Yeah. So, what are the root of these problems? How do you even get down there?
Well,
Now, it's a lot to think about.
It's a tough question. And I think that there's a lot of roots of the problems, and we could go on all day, but we really have to pick one. And I'd say the one we should pick is stereotypes, mostly because I have the documents on that. And it was pre-decided. So, one thing I have here is a poem. It's from 2007, and it was by Thomas King. And it is called I'm Not the Indian You Had in Mind. It is really long.
How many pages almost?
So, I'm not going to read it to you. But I will read you a quote to kind of give you an idea of what it is. The bare greased hair, the pungent smell, the piercing eye, the startling yell. Thank God he's the friendly and kind. But I'm not the Indian you had in mind. This really gives you an idea, I think, of just the kind of stereotyped Indian it thinks you should, that non-Indigenous people think Indigenous people should be.
Yeah, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
Maybe things will change. Next article's from 2017.
Yes. Except, sorry Lila, things haven't changed. Same stereotype. So we have the warrior. One of the biggest stereotypes, not our generation, but more of our parents' and grandparents' generation would pay cowboys and Indians when they were little, right? Ride around on a horseback, he's got the bow and arrow. That's kind of the warrior stereotype.
Actually, never heard of that.
No way. Well, I have. I guess you just didn't read enough Archie comics growing up. Tough. Okay. Another one is the princess. This is Pocahontas. Beautiful Indigenous woman who is rescued from her savage civilization by the white man. Very incorrect. I don't really think we need to expand on that.
Yeah.
It's kind of obvious what's wrong with it. And then the last one is kind of the most convoluted, and it's the one that I actually see in a lot of texts that think they're empowering, but they're actually not. And it's the noble mystic, where it's the amazing Indigenous person who's just so wise and, doesn't speak much, but has that connection with nature. And it's actually kind of inaccurate, and it can still be damaging and harmful.
Yeah, it's kind of glorifying it and objectifying it And that's why it's so inherently problematic.
Exactly. And I mean, like, the prevalence of these stereotypes in today's day and age, I mean, like, they're way more prevalent than you would think. And I mean, sometimes it feels like there's not that much racism anymore against Indigenous people, but that's so inaccurate. I mean, just look how there's 15 Truth and Reconciliation Commissions going back to that haven't even started yet, and 21 have just been stalled.
Yeah.
What does that leave? 44 in progress?
Yeah, 44 still in progress.
So, 21 stalled. I mean, some would say we're actually starting to backtrack rather than going forward. We're in a bit of a dip here.
Yeah, especially considering all the political turbulence our country's in right now.
Horrible. An example of awful stereotypes is the break. I wrote a whole essay on it.
Yeah, you can find a link to it in the description of this video if you want to read Guthrie's academic essay.
Yes! It was very famous. You remember that? I had you proofread it.
Yes.
It was so nice. Anyway, so it just discusses how Catherine Vermette's The Break, which is an award-winning book. Great. It actually has one words.
Yeah, I saw the cover.
Very
Unfortunately.
sadly. Anyway, but anyhow, it's supposed to empower Indigenous people, but it fails and enforces stereotypes like alcoholism and addiction in Indigenous people, as well as strongly enforcing the stereotype of the absent father or male in Indigenous peoples, which is a really harmful stereotype that, especially if Indigenous youth see it growing up, what you see is what often ends up happening. So
Yeah, like people internalize these stereotypes, and that's why they can be so dangerous.
what's it Hitler always said? Tell a lie enough times and it becomes true.
I didn't expect a Hitler quote to be weird. Dang, okay.
It's also
No.
Donald Trump's actually motto, I think.
That's
Anyway,
wild.
whatever.
Okay. No.
We can have another episode about that later on.
Yes, episode 2 drop? Oh my goodness. Okay. And with all these stereotypes and the negative thoughts that people already have about Indigenous peoples, they think they need to be accommodated for. And those accommodations will lead to equality. But that's not true. In an article that we found in another class we had together, it's called The Missing Link.
Tolerance, accommodation, and equality.
Yes, but there's an ellipses before equality. Because accommodation doesn't equal equality. Accommodation creates hierarchical stereotypes wherein majorities confer benefits over minorities. And that's a long-winded way of saying there's us and then there's them. And they're less than us.
So sometimes when you think that you're being really nice by calling somebody out and being like, we're accommodating you, You're
Yeah.
thinking that you're being really nice and inclusive and you're making them feel like, oh, look at this, they said, they're including us. But that's not actually what's happening. You're kind of making it obvious that they're them and they're not the majority, they're the minority.
Yeah, they're the minority.
Different. We're normal, they're weird. That's kind of the idea you give.
Yeah.
Do you want me to say my example of this?
I do want you to say your example.
Okay, before we recorded
My favorite
this,
story.
me and Lila were having a discussion about this article, and she said we gotta think of an example. So I told her, oh, that reminds me about something that happened to me. I didn't actually think I was gonna have to say it, but she said, no, you should say it on the podcast. So here we are. Okay, last year we won free tickets to a Sens game. Go Sens, go! We should have an episode on that.
No, we shouldn't.
They're gonna make it to the playoffs. I can feel
Oh
it.
my gosh,
Okay.
second last in their division?
Well, but they're in a playoff spot, maybe. Wild card. Whoop whoop. Okay.
That's wild.
Yes, it is. but that's not the point. The point is that last year when they were not doing so well, they were doing awful. But anyway, they lost this game. We won tickets. We went to the game. What we didn't know is that it was Pride Night.
Pride night.
And we show up. There's rainbows everywhere. The person who sung the national anthem was a pride person.
What's a pride person? That's crazy.
An
Never thought of
LGBTQ
that.
plus community member. Actually very nice. Crazy hair, very nice. And then Anyway, we all got free t-shirts, is the conclusion. Very nice t-shirts. They're like send, the send symbol, except inside it's like the flag.
It's the inclusive pride flag.
Exactly, the LGBTQ plus flag. Anyway, which was fun. And I was like, oh my god, so of course I had to wear it to school because I got this free shirt from a Sens game, right? But then I was surprised because at first I didn't know what was happening, but all the, especially like adults and the inclusive-minded people were treating me different. And they were like, oh my god, Guthrie, I love your shirt, good for you for wearing it. And here I'm thinking, I just went to the Sens game last night, and what are people talking to me all weird about? And then I realized, since it was the rainbow, they were like, oh my god, look at you, you're like coming out or whatever. Like, that's amazing. And they're all treating me so amazing for wearing this gay shirt. Except, I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what, if I was actually wearing that because of, like, being gay or whatever, it would actually be really demeaning, and I'd feel kind of annoyed, because all I want to do is wear this shirt I have, and people are all being like, oh my god, Guthrie. Anyway, it was really weird.
Yeah. And, like, even how that story was told, when you were, like, the gay night, the pride night, it's like, that's them.
Exactly.
LGBTQIA2S plus community is over there.
Why can't we have an everybody night? Also, it was
That's inherently problematic as well.
Also, it was on Down Syndrome Day, which I thought was also a bit problematic. So, But this is not a podcast about the Sens games and how they theme their nights and whether that's right or wrong. So, the point of the matter is that this is used with Indigenous people all the time.
Yes. Like, people who are in the majority think that the minorities want this accommodation, they want this special treatment because that's how they're included. But they have their own things. They don't need us to feel like we're doing a good job and that they're included.
Hear, hear.
You're here.
So.
No!
There's some examples about the accommodation, like when you're not doing that.
When we're not accommodating?
But like we're being inclusive by not accommodating. What would be an example of that?
You change the policy around the issue itself. So there was a workplace in Toronto that had a large Muslim population, and they needed a prayer space. Not a large Muslim population, they were still the minority, but there was a significant amount, and they needed like a couple hours a day to pray. So the office couldn't really say, oh, you guys can leave and everyone else can't. They reworked the policy to have flex time during the day so that these people can do their religious stuff and everyone else is included in that. So there's no difference. The difference isn't highlighted at all. It's just, oh, they need time, that's okay. And they're doing that.
Which is exactly what we need to do with Indigenous people. Now, Lila, I am shocked because you always go on about it and it makes me annoyed. But you haven't mentioned your favorite show yet.
My favorite show, Shoresy! Okay, Shoresy, we talk a lot about bad media like The Break, but Shoresy actually does its job really well. It's a hockey show, and it's still a hockey show, but it has like a lot of Indigenous characters. The coach of the team's Indigenous. He's Cree actually. There, what was it? No, he's not Cree. They changed that. That's another example where they didn't accommodate. They just raised the bar. Like, yeah, you can change that identity so the actor can use the slang that he knows and not have to speak a different language. And the best part of Shoresy, they had a lot of Indigenous characters. They had a lot of inclusion. They had a lot of good representation, but they didn't highlight it.
Do you know how many times I've heard this speech?
A lot. This is my long monologue because I love Shoresy because it does such a good job about highlighting hockey and highlighting how inclusive the sport could be.
Actually, I was at my neighbor's house the other day.
It's not about hockey. It's about Indigenous inclusivity.
There was an ad for Shoresy. All I thought about was you. I was like, oh my gosh, if only Lila was here, she would have a thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Look at how well they're including Indigenous people.
Yay! Alright. So.
They're just normal people. Yes.
Okay, so that kind of proves the point of the article. But what's next?
What's next? So you've heard us yap a lot. We've been going on and on. But let's hear what the residents of Perth have to think about these issues.
We went out around the town and we have...
Yes!
Okay,
We have some stuff to show you.
you can see us interviewing the town of Perth, and then when we're back, we can talk about what we thought of it. Okay. Indigenous Studies Culminating Project. We are doing a podcast on truth and reconciliation.
Oh my god!
What do you think next steps should be for truth and reconciliation in Canada?
The most important thing that we need to do is, as a society, come together and recognize that truth and reconciliation needs to keep moving forward.
I'll agree with the topic, but I don't know too much about the subject, and I'm curious to learn more about it.
I think that rather than stating that we acknowledge that we're on their land, perhaps we actually do something to make it right.
Well, what I think the next step should be for truth and reconciliation, I don't know that that matters. What I think matters is what Indigenous leaders think should be the next steps, right?
You know, I think the next steps to truth and reconciliation for Indigenous people in Canada is to honor the 94 calls to action, because I feel like if you're not going to honor them, they're kind of useless. And I think that honoring the residential school survivors and not just kind of pay them off would be some good next steps.
All right, we just got back from attempting to interview the residents of Perth, Ontario.
Yeah, we interviewed 5 groups of people. 4 said they didn't want to answer.
One stated that he didn't want to interview us because he was a poly-ev voter, which I guess means you're not interested in Indigenous affairs.
Yeah.
We also had many people not want to be recorded. This really is disappointing, seeing how little the residents of Perth care about the education of their youth. That was so interesting.
Very informative. That guy who was talking about Polyev, though, we couldn't include that because he didn't want to be recorded.
Yeah, so we did a lot around the building of the Perth and District Collegiate Institute. We interviewed a lot of people there. You can see all the people who were indoors. That was Perth and District Collegiate Institute, PACI. But then we went out about the town, and you probably only saw one clip. Do you know why that is?
Because 4 people said they didn't want to answer, like we said in the last clip, and one of them was a very nice couple with 2 dogs. I was like, hey, look at those dogs, those are cute, let's go film those.
They wouldn't let us.
They wouldn't let us.
Actually, the people of Perth were really mean. As I said, I thought that they would be more excited to encourage their youth, but no, I'm overwhelmed. It's very emotional. They shunned us. They didn't want anything to do with us. But anyway, the one couple with the dog.
Yeah, the man, as we said before, he said, I don't want to answer because I'm a Polyev voter.
What does that even mean?
What does that mean?
He was like, I'm not interested in this subject. I'm a Polyev voter. Like, do Polyev voters just inherently not care about Indigenous affairs? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, after 9.5 years of stalling, having 44 in progress, 15 not started, calls to action that, I feel like this should be at the forefront of our issues.
It shouldn't matter what your political group or party is. You should still care about Indigenous issues. That would be like somebody saying, oh, I'm NDP, I don't care about the economy. No, that's not how it works.
No.
Everybody cares about the economy because it affects everybody. Everybody should care about the Indigenous peoples because that is, this is originally their land.
Yes, and the problem is we're trying to market them. We do land acknowledgements. They're in all of the ads that I've seen so far. Come to Canada, look at all of our rich culture. That's not your culture, though. I guarantee the person making that, all the people in government, they're not Indigenous people.
It's kind of like that lady said. She had a really hot take.
She did.
She talked about
She told us to give the land back, and I was like,
She was like, there shouldn't be reserves, segregation, she
Yeah.
said. Which was actually an interesting point, I thought.
Yeah, something to think about. We're given a lot of stuff to think about. I like Miss Condren's point though.
Yes, that's the blonde lady who was sitting at the desk.
Yeah.
She talked. She's the one who talked about how it's not our opinion that matters as non-Indigenous peoples, right?
Yeah. So I feel like the moral of that entire video, something that we can take away from it, is that let Indigenous peoples have a say. And take that, like, actually for real, take it into consideration when making decisions.
Lila, we're gonna get into trouble. We forgot to do our sponsor. We better do it now.
Oh my goodness. We have had 2 generous sponsors that have made this program possible. Our first one, big thank you to Student Council. Come to the De-Stressable on January 23rd in the cafeteria. There's going to be music. There's going to be free Timbits, free hot chocolate, free school supplies. So, come by, take a visit.
And she's the student council president, actually, so
I am.
she's kind of
By
biased.
Student Council
but,
plug.
you know. And then we wanted to advocate for, I don't know, promote
the Youth Politicians of Canada.
What a great organization.
Non-partisan, lets youth connect with MPs, MPPs. They've met with Doug Ford, a bunch of high-up people. And
it's really cool.
Yeah.
Involving all the youth of Canada in politics from coast to coast to
coast. Because we have 3 coasts.
I was
Yeah.
going to say the third one. I swear. Yeah, so
Yeah.
there you go. Oh,
My friend. Okay, no, it's still on. Okay, we had a little scare there. It turned off.
Our tech was almost... Did we tell you? Oh my gosh. We have went to record this twice and our technology has failed. The technology is against us.
Yeah.
So, but we're so excited because it made this episode all the more better, I think. It's going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. It is going to be great. So, thank you for tuning in today. This was...
Get informed!
Yeah!
Okay.
Okay. Well, hello, Get Informed. I'm Lila,
And I'm Guthrie.
and we're so glad to have you listening today. We are finally done. It's finally over.
Yes, it has been a lot of work, but we are finally releasing our first episode, The Road to Reconciliation. We should interview Taylor again. Yes. Because she refused last time. Another great interviewee on... That is so real, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alright,
Love you.
Addison. You're not doing it.
Get away from me.
Now, how do you feel?
Hey, I am so relieved to have it done, and I'm so excited to work on more projects with the Get Informed team.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.